I want y'all to watch this. This is just now beginning to, I guess the right word would be, unveil itself pertaining to the issues at hand. And I know a lot of people are getting tired of hearing about COVID. COVID this, COVID that, coronavirus pandemic. I know people have been burnt out on just hearing the word COVID, much less having it in your neighborhood or making you get masked or any of the above. But you need to watch this, and it just literally makes me cringe whenever I watch something this devastating to human life, and then I watch a governor respond the way that this governor did down in Florida. It literally makes me cringe to the point of being heartbroken, of becoming angry of thinking that these are the people that we have voted in to protect us and take care of us, that are the very people that could literally care less about us. And it's not just this particular governor in Florida that I'm talking about. It's basically across the board in those who have been voted in to various positions in government, regardless whether it's state, local, or federal. Judges, politicians alike, sheriffs, etc. State representatives, federal representatives. It literally makes me sick at my very core whenever I watch a program like this, especially whenever they're talking about children. My heart goes out to what's happening right now in the state of Florida, which, you know, I've tried to issue out advisory after advisory, warning after warning. What's happening here is not only a biological, chemical bug, but it's also got to do with the spirituality pertaining to the great sorrows that will fall upon humanity because of all the sin. And until we're willing to turn, accept, and analyze our sins and do something about those sins, I'm just afraid that these episodes that we're watching, are fixing to watch, are just going to escalate and get worse and worse and worse. You see, I lived down in Florida on 4 different events. One time in 1979, then I lived in St. Augustine, then I lived in Homestead, then I lived in St. Augustine again. So there's not too many areas in and out that I haven't explored towards knowing the ins and outs, towards what they do and what they don't do pertaining to Florida. And I'm just going to be as frank as saying this as I know to say it, just to come out and say it. I have never in my entire life been to none other state. I've been to some crazy states that done some crazy things, but none like Florida pertaining to the sorcery, open witchcraft, devil worshiping, paranormal activity as far as palm readers and fortune tellers, etc. I've never been to an area that was inundated, literally inundated, with so much of that's going on pertaining to the dark demonic side of spirituality. And until these people are willing to come clean and come out of this, I'm just afraid that it's not just going to be Florida, but it's going to be Louisiana. You know, you tend to wonder, how come Louisiana got bombarded with 4 hurricanes last year? Bam, 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 bam. And then this year, they've already been hit by another flood. And I think before last year, they was hit by a flood or two. Matter of fact, I know there was up towards up towards where they got the Capitol at, where Jimmy Swaggart's headquarters is. Baton Rouge. Last night in New Orleans was a major shooting. 4 people got severely injured. I mean, it's just a rampage of what we're seeing right now, not just on a biological scale or level, but also on a human scale, pertaining to how Mother Nature is lashing out with all the sorrows, and how we're seeing the people lash out with all the violence. And it's not just in 2 or 3 spots. This thing's happening all over the countryside in some form or fashion. In some form or fashion, these occurrences is skyrocketing. Just like the gun violence that's happening now all over America. And it just literally makes me cringe whenever I hear of stories pertaining to children, innocent children, that now are basically taking the brunt of the blow in what's happening down in Florida. Please listen.
And the statewide positivity rate is 18.2%. And as you mentioned at the top, the governor he's issued this executive order saying that schools cannot require masks for children as they return to school. He thinks it's all about the freedom of parents to decide. He says that anyone who defies this executive order, they could lose funding. They might not be eligible for grants as well. So he is all about just not doing anything about restricting the students going back to school, restrictions around the state, and also making sure that nobody is required to wear a mask in the state of Florida. Jessica.
Wow. This with an 18% positivity rate for kids under the age of 12. Randy Kay, thanks so much. We appreciate it. And
I'm just going to say this. And I know a great deal of them mean well in their lifestyles down in Florida, because it's considered a tropical environment. It's considered a retirement environment. It's considered a tourist environment. But while I was in St. Augustine, the first time I become a member at the Anastasia Baptist Church for almost a year, going to church there, living on Anastasia Island, and I couldn't tell you the amount of times, either on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, or throughout other events, that you would walk into classrooms or the sanctuary and see some of the most beautifulest people in the world. But the type of clothing that they had on in those worshiping centers, in those sanctuaries, regardless whether it was the men or the women, was so provocative. I had trouble myself sitting in the seats sometimes, looking at basically women. I'm not attractive to men. And literally wondering to myself, my God, don't they realize that this is a worshiping sanctuary area? That things are supposed to be considered a bit out of the norm of the public towards it being holy or sanctified in some sort of way? You're not supposed to come into church and present a provocative atmosphere, male or female, to the point that you're causing a stumbling block in somebody else's heart or in somebody else's eyes, to the point that they're literally sitting there glutting and lusting after you. Simply because you're good looking and you got a good looking figure and you got a good looking tan, and the type of clothing that you have on just enhances the very atmosphere that you have created for yourself. You're not supposed to do this stuff in church, especially in church. Now, if you want to do it in your backyard, that's your business. If you want to do it in the privacy of your husband or your wife, That's your business. If you're wearing the proper clothing and you want to go to the beach or the swimming pool, that's your business. But to go to church, to go where the minister of God is divinely bringing Scripture out into the rest of the ears of the hearing view course there, and knowing that the very thing that he's teaching is the very thing that you're doing the opposite thereof. It wouldn't be no different if you went in there with a gun and started shooting and killing people. It wouldn't be no different if you went in there with the ideal, well, I'm going to steal everything I can put my hands on. It doesn't matter if it's the plate that comes around or if it's something sitting on a bench somewhere. I'm gonna walk in here and I'm gonna steal everything that I can get my hands on. Are you having the motive towards wanting to go in there and just lie, just tell one fictitious lie after another to the people that's in that church? There has to be some sort of maintenance of law and order. And there's law and order in the eyes of the public pertaining to what country that you live in, and then there's law and order pertaining to God's law and God's order. And whenever you start defiling those orders, like I said, there's a bunch of people that's been raised up this way, generation after generation after generation, and they literally don't think that they're doing no wrong. They're that blinded and that ignorant of the type of provocative clothing that they're wearing going to church, are literally out in the eyes of the general public. They literally don't care. And I could tell you some really, really fascinating stories that goes beyond this, towards some things that I have stumbled upon in Florida that is not even appropriate for me to talk about right now towards this show that I'm trying to bring forth with CNN pertaining to the coronavirus problem down there. There's lots of things that I could tell you about that I stumbled upon, that I witnessed for myself. I'm talking about big trucks pulling up beside gas station pumps, and all of a sudden some young girl come jumping out, barely wearing a dental floss between her legs and barely covering up her two nipples, and sitting there pumping gas while you're trying to concentrate on pumping your gas. That looks like something that come out of a Hustler book. And then there's been other situations that I've seen where they didn't have no clothes at all, but they just walk around and just act like it's normal. Whenever you have generation after generation after generation of people that's been taught this way, that thinks that what they're doing is appropriate or right, especially whenever they're walking into sanctuaries and churches this way, you got a problem. You got a serious problem in Florida. And it's not just Florida. It's Louisiana. And it's other parts of the country that have opened up to this wickedness, to this sin. Like I have never, ever, ever thought that I would witness in my entire life. Drugs, guys coming in to work, just throwing their weed or throwing their pills on top of the toolbox. That way any and everybody can come in and see what's on top of the box. Managers, salesmen, estimators, insurance adjusters, company people, professional people, coming in with suit and ties, seeing this type of influence amongst the workforce. You know, you wonder how come the building collapsed down there in Miami, or just this side of Miami. I feel like a lot of it had to do with a lot of shabbiness that went on during that era. After hurricane, I forgot the name of the hurricane now, that almost took Homestead completely off the map. I don't think but there was like one building standing, which was the post office or something like that. But up until then, America had its standoffishness about not wanting the Cubans to come over to Florida towards taking their jobs away. Well, after that occurred, they literally let their guards down and started welcoming the Cubans towards coming over to America and building and rebuilding not just Homestead, but also River City and Miami and all those other places up and down the coast. Well, whenever you have people coming over here that's basically incapacitated because of the drugs that they're on, or they're incapacitated because of the knowledge that they've been taught towards not knowing how to build a structure, you're going to have chinchy, shoddy construction that's going to wind up being like that building that fell, that killed, I don't know what the final tally was. I'm sure it was way over 100 people that wound up perishing the day that that building fell. Whenever you have these type of restrictions going on so lax that all of a sudden you allow any and everything to come over to your area that starts building residential homes and commercial homes and skyscrapers and high rises and other types of roads and bridges, I'm really, really surprised that we hadn't seen a whole lot more of that down there in that area. And I'm pretty sure as time goes along, we probably will see more of that. Matter of fact, I think that they had another construction accident about a week ago where a roof fell in on a bunch of people. I don't know how many people got hurt or got killed, if any, I don't know, but the fact of the matter is they got a lot of issues down in Florida. Florida at one time used to be one of the most greatest places in the world to go to back in the 70s and throughout the early 80s. You had your Native Americans down there that had been living down there all their lives until all the wealthy and the rich people and the retirees started coming down there with all their problems, until they got inundated with all the Cubans coming out of Cuba that come over there with all their drugs. I mean, you gotta call it like it is. And whenever they legalized basically the Wiccan religion in regards towards an occult in 1986, whenever they legalized that and started a college, a foundation down there in I forgot the name of it now, but it's in between Daytona and Orlando, Casadena, Florida. Whenever you open up your guard to say, okay, we got a place down here that'll teach you how to be a warlock and a witch, they get the same tax breaks and the same incentives as any other college or any other institution. Whenever you do this, and then you see all the fortune tellers and all the soothsayers and all the witches and the warlocks and stuff that's spread out throughout all the partying and the drinking and the drugging. I hate to say it. Sadly, it's not a wonder that this coronavirus is now taking a stab at the children in Florida. And it's really based around the Bible, because the Bible says that Satan is out to kill, steal, and destroy, and he's basically turning on their own kind. And now, because they don't have the Holy Spirit, the true Holy Spirit, working with them and for them, they're left vulnerable, and because they're vulnerable, now they're more susceptible of either getting sick or dying or some horrible, horrible things happening in that area. While I was in, I'm going to end real quick with this gesture. While I was in Anastasia Island, we done a survey towards pedophiles within a 5-mile radius from the island going back into St. Augustine. And it registered within a 5-mile area, and you keep in mind the 5-mile area was only from the water's edge back. You ain't going to have people from the water's edge back towards the ocean. But within that 5-mile radius, there was something like 472 known registered pedophiles. And that was just the people that was registered, and that was just the people that was known. God only knows how many people that was flocking around that area that had been caught or doing something inappropriately sexually to who knows who that wasn't registered. Florida has one of the highest contents of sexually crimes because of the way that their lifestyle is towards living basically a flaunted, provocative life. Their diseases, sexual transmitted diseases, is higher around your coastline areas than your inland areas. Do you think you know why? Because of all the bed swapping, all the sexual stuff that's going on around the oceans and around the lakes, around the recreational areas. You know, when people strip off all their clothes and they're in their 20s or 30s and they look like something that just got through coming out of a Playboy magazine, you're going to entice people because people are weak. And it's one thing to entice people in the open population, and it's another thing to bring that into the churches. And that's exactly what I've seen again and again and again. Not just from the Anastasia Baptist people, and God bless their souls, because there was a lot of them that I literally just loved dearly because of their disposition and how they thought of things and how they looked in life pertaining to their goals and stuff like that. But all throughout Florida, it's the same way from top to bottom, basically all throughout Florida. Let's listen to this. Like I said, it's very, very emotionally sad. And if you don't have a strong appetite of hearing what you're going to hear, I would strongly suggest for you to either close your ears for the next few minutes or just skip over this area of what they're fixing to talk about.
Joining me now is Dr. Bernard Ashby. He is a cardiologist based in Miami. Dr. Ashby, great to see you. Thanks for being with us. We know, as Randy just laid out, you are at the center of it there in Florida. First, tell us what you're seeing.
So, Florida is now the epicenter of the pandemic in the United States. Currently, our hospitals are actually overwhelmed. We are seeing some of the highest numbers that we've ever seen at any point in the pandemic. My hospital in particular has basically switched to emergency status, which basically incorporates a number of measures that prevents people from coming to visit the patients. Also includes an increase in our ICU capacity because our ICUs are filling up. And now we no longer do elective cases as a result of the surge. And so this is having a huge impact on our life and our ability to practice medicine.
Absolutely, on you all's life and also the health systems. If somebody has a heart attack or needs other treatment, it sounds very limited in terms of where they can go. Your governor, Ron DeSantis, is digging in on masks and also on restrictions that would clearly save lives. Let's listen to his take on masks in schools.
I have young kids. My wife and I are not going to do the mask with the kids. We never have. I want to see my kids smiling. I want them having fun. And I don't know, I mean, look, my kids are a little younger, but I can tell you, whatever you think of masks, you got to wear it properly. My kids ain't going to wear that thing properly. You know that.
Dr. Ashby, in your medical opinion, how much risk is the governor's stance posing for Florida's students and teachers right now?
I am at a loss for words. Governor DeSantis thinks this is a joke. This is not a joke. Florida is #1 in the hospitalization of children in the whole entire country. School hasn't even started yet. The positivity rate, as you mentioned, under 12 is 18+%. We have not even reached our peak yet. We had our highest infection rate to date, again, in the entire pandemic, not just this year, the entire pandemic recently. And school is starting in August 10th, more or less, in the entire state of Florida. We are still in the midst of our surge. This is going to get worse. And the fact that he's over here making fun of masks, completely ignoring the science, is reckless and frankly inhumane. I don't know what to say. I don't think he cares about children. I mean, I'm sure his kids are probably fine, but as far as my child is concerned, and everyone that I know, this just isn't right, and it's reckless, seriously.
Yeah, and really, as we've talked about, children under the age of 12 who aren't eligible for the vaccine yet are really at the mercy of the adults making decisions for them right now, and the status and health of the others around them. Some parents are saying, well, children are at a lesser risk of getting COVID, or there are other reasons they're giving for being hesitant to get that vaccine. What are you hearing from parents about why people are hesitant to get the vaccine if they're eligible? Because kids who are 12 and older can get the vaccine.
So before I get to that, one thing I must mention is that the equation has changed. The Delta variant is different from all of the previous iterations of the coronavirus. This virus produces a viral load 1,000 times higher than previous versions.
Did you hear what he just said? 1,000 times higher. Do you understand now why this makes me cringe whenever I hear something like this? And it's not just the negativity pertaining to their governor, but it's the statistics of him talking about how that the dynamics of this Delta coronavirus has changed tremendously, and nobody is identifying the lethalness in what is occurring, especially whenever they're right here fixing to open up schools that will be a cesspool, a breeding ground per se for this disease to even enhance, to get worse. This makes me cringe. This makes my heart break. This is a professional human being to the left-hand side that works for the healthcare industry. His heart's desire is to save life. That's why they take the oath, the hypocritical oath the doctors do, not to destroy life or to damage life or to hurt life, but to preserve life. Whenever I hear something like this coming from this type of an individual, it makes me cringe, because I realize the qualifications that it takes for this individual to be in the position that he or she, it don't matter whether or not it's a he, but I realize that it takes a lot of requirements for them to maintain this position, and to hear them talking this way, this should not be ignored. This should not be laughed at. This should not be snarled at or made fun of. Like I told you at the very beginning, I realize that people are sick and tired of hearing the word COVID, or hearing the word pandemic on the level that we've been hearing it for the past year and a half now. I understand that we're all burnt out on this. I'm burnt out on it too. I wish that I could wave a wand and just make it all go away. I wish that, that I could press a button or hit a switch and make it all reverse. But it's not going to happen that way. And there's no need of me sitting here telling you that it's going to happen that way, because I would be sitting here lying to you if I told you that it was going to happen that way. This thing is going to have to work itself out the way that any other pandemic has worked itself out, beginning with other types of pandemics that's hit the planet. It is an entity, a live entity, that is substance of changing at just a split second. And as it changes, so also shall our opinions about it change. And what we should or shouldn't be doing pertaining to the lethalness of what it's doing. That's the reason why we're hearing all these mixed complaints coming from CDC. It's not because they don't know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. It's that the virus is mutating, and as it's changing, as it's mutating, so also is the prognosis is changing towards what we should and shouldn't do. That's the part that the human consumption here in America, I can't speak for everybody else throughout the planet, but that's the part that the human consumption cannot conceive or cannot comprehend pertaining to what we're dealing with. It's a monster. It's a literal monster that has been unleashed upon the society. And because of its intensity and because of its variations of what it does and what it can do and how many different stages that it can go through, it makes it one of the most complex situations that our medical industry or our scientific industry has ever had to deal with in their careers. Ever. And the sad thing about it is, from all indication of what I'm looking at here, instead of it getting better before it gets worse, I hate to be the bad news bearer, but from all indication, it looks like it's going to get worse before it gets better. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm just a regular old Joe that observes certain things just like you observe certain things on the news. But as I said a while ago, whenever I hear and see statistics like this coming from a professional, it literally makes me cringe.
Higher than previous versions. Therefore, when you're exposed to the Delta variant, you're getting a lot more virus and more people are getting sick. We have quite a few studies, some of which were mentioned in the CDC leaked documents, that indicated that this particular variant actually has a higher mortality rate. That's important to know. And when it comes to kids, you don't experiment with your children. We know that masks work. We know that it's an important mitigation measure. And the fact that he's talking about seeing his kids smile, I'd rather see my kids alive. I'd rather see my kids without a tube down their neck. I'd rather see my kids out of the hospital. That's what I would rather see, so that they can smile for the rest of their lives. And so the fact that he's, again, making fun of masks is ridiculous. Now, in terms of hesitancy, I mean, parents have real concerns. I mean, it's one thing when you take a vaccine for yourself, but when you're talking about your children, it's an entirely different, equation. And so what I would like to tell parents out there is that the vaccines have been studied in the demographic of 12 to 16-year-olds. They have been proven to be safe. There's no issues in terms of increasing clots and whatnot that people have put out there. The rate of complications is relatively low. And the fact that people are perpetuating misinformation / disinformation is actually leading to more people being hurt and harmed by this virus.
And I think your point, underscoring just how different things are now, is so important. As another expert told me earlier today, Delta is different. So thank you for clarifying all of that. Thank you for your expertise. Stay healthy, stay safe down there. We appreciate it, Dr. Bernard Ashby.
Thank you so much.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio.
I don't think it can get much any sadder than what they're talking about, of that in which what's going on right now, that's basically turning into an explosion that has jumped in Florida cases within the past 2 weeks of 144%. Once more, these are statistics. These ain't ideals. This isn't some sort of philosophy. This isn't ideology. This isn't somebody's delirious, delusional mind that's still at the point of somebody like Donald Trump, that's still basically a denier about this, a COVID denier, a penicillin denier, or whatever. These are hardcore facts that are coming out to the general public. And if the general public don't pay close attention to this, that number that we're looking at right there of 144% could actually intensify even more so. As you see the CDC statistics, 99.999% that's fully vaccinated do not die from COVID. They may die from other circumstances, and I'm sure that there'll probably be a few that will have a certain reaction to the COVID shot. But 99.999%, that's pretty close of being foolproof, folks. And why it's even debatable towards people not taking the vaccination shot after we have went through what we've went through over the past year, to me, it's absolutely, it's asinizing. It's absolutely reckless for people not to take this serious, pertaining to all the people that has now severely either been sick or died over this coronavirus that is now obviously mutating into something even stronger than what it was originally. So whenever President Biden talks about various restrictions, intensifying this and intensifying that, hey, he knows by getting the recommendations from this one and that one and that one and this one, he knows what's coming down the pike. And he knows as these things are coming down the pike, we're going to have to do something. And for a governor, Governor Ron, to take this light-mindedly the way that he displayed himself on camera a while ago, is only declaring his ignorance or his foolishness of how he's attacking this problem in regards towards its lethal compounds. I guarantee you the people that has lost loved ones, the people that has been sick, the people that just barely made it through life, that is struggling now to get back on their feet, whenever they see this in how that the governor of the state of Florida responded and reacted about the masks, they will not take it lightly. They will not take it lightly. And like I was telling you all ago, there's a great deal of politicians in our country right now that has the same type of disposition that this man right here has about not only his citizens in the state of Florida, but the citizens here in America. They're supposed to be protecting us. We vote these people in to protect us, to warn us. We vote these people in so that it will be the best going thing above and beyond the circumstances that we as a whole have to deal with. And whenever these people that we have voted in are no longer being effective and are no longer doing their jobs, then I think it's time to reevaluate towards who we ought to have up there in power right now. And I'm talking about old politicians. I'm not talking about the new ones that's just come on board, but I'm talking about them that has this type of disposition about themselves that obviously has not taken matters seriously about what a great deal of people is having to endure right now. It's sad, to say the least. It's a heartbreak. And like I told you a while ago, it makes me cringe to hear professionals like this talk, knowing that they're truly going by statistics and not ideals. Thanks again, and good luck to all of us once more as we end our program. Shalom.